It's a pleasure to present my K-3 project entitled Communicating Expectations in the Graduate Student Mentor Interaction, a Pilot Study. And I had the pleasure of working with Sandra Pfister on this project. So wellness initiatives are relatively well developed for medical students, but not so well for graduate students. And one aspect of graduate student well-being that's not represented in the literature is the role of defining clear expectations. This is supported by informal discussions with numerous graduate students from several programs. So I targeted 31 students in the first year IDP, NDP, and physiology departments by creating pre and post surveys to be completed before joining a dissertation lab and after, and that's centered on their rotations. I then also provided them an expectations toolkit to try to help them with these conversations. I then collected the data and analyzed it. So I had a response rate of 58%. And 90% of the respondents felt it was very to extremely important to have an expectations conversation. Yet 25% had no conversations in any of their rotations, despite guidelines that it should occur. And 43% were not very comfortable in initiating the conversation on their own. 33 to 47% found the conversation to be moderately useful when it did happen, and it didn't get much better with successive rotations. 21% also didn't have an exit conversation despite it being required, and of those who did, 23% found that that conversation was also not terribly useful. 89% reported the expectation conversation to be very to extremely important when choosing a dissertation lab. After they joined a lab, 58% reported having an expectations conversation, but only 37% of those found it to be useful. And the toolkit I provided was also not effective, as they didn't find that terribly useful. The students in general thought the project was good based on their comments. So in conclusion, expectation and exit conversations are expected, but often don't occur. So faculty need training and encouragement to initiate these conversations, as the students have to initiate the majority of the time, yet they're not comfortable with that. And a simple toolkit isn't sufficient to prepare them for this. So adherence to guidelines for these conversations needs some enforcement at the program or graduate school levels, given that it's not happening routinely. So I was curious how graduate students feel about expectations, about adherence. Are they comfortable with initiating these conversations, and can we equip them to better initiate them? I connected with several students in the courses and within the well-being group and select faculty to do this project. And in the future, I need to connect with IDP and NDP leaders as well as the graduate school to try to make this happen more routinely. So the value is the data that I generated and the comments from the students about expectations that help them feel valued, and it's a starting point for future wellness conversations.